Gregg Kaufman joins us today. We're going to talk about the American Democracy Project on GC Conversations. Hello and welcome to GC Conversations, a show where each week we bring in faculty, staff, alumni, and friends, and we talk all things Georgia College in this community. So thanks for joining us today, whether we're reaching you by cable television or by radio on WRGC 88.3 FM right here on the campus of Georgia College. Thanks for being here. Today we're joined by Gregg Kaufman, the coordinator of the American Democracy Project here on our campus. Gregg, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And I'm going to start with that. I usually dive in and say, well, tell me a little bit about yourself, but I want to go right to this title. Tell me and our audience today, what is the American Democracy Project? And I know you're not going to be able to do that in one sentence, so this is going to take a while. Tell me about that.
Well, the ADP is 10 years old, and Georgia College was one of the original 70 universities in the country to join the American Democracy Project. That was started by ASCU, the Association of State Colleges and Universities in this country. And presidents and provosts felt that over the years, students had become less and less interested in the democratic process. So they started to think about how we could engage students and stimulate interest in democracy on our public university campuses. So they started it in 2003. They imagined that it would be a 3-year project. 2 years in, there were 230 colleges.
Wow. And
we will celebrate our 10th anniversary this coming June in Denver, Colorado at our annual meeting.
Now, are you the original coordinator, or have you been here since the inception?
No, almost.
Okay.
I came 7 months after the beginning of the ADP. I came to Georgia College in 2004 as the director of the Coverdell Institute, and one of our jobs was to coordinate the American Democracy Project.
Okay, so take me back a little bit before that about how the college got involved in this project. You said 70 of them across the country. Where did this all stem from? And I know maybe you weren't there on the ground level, but from what you can recall there, where did all this stem from with our interest, and then how did we get attached to this?
Well, it really started with 3 presidents ago, President Rosemary DiPaolo. And she was a part of a conversation of a group of college presidents at a summer conference. George Mahaffey, who is a vice president at ASCU, was there, and people were kind of grumbling actually about the state of democracy and how students or people of college age were not voting in as many numbers. And George said, well, what are we going to do about this? We can sit here and grumble all we want. And out of that came the idea to create a kind of a cooperative collaboration of universities. George calls it the largest unfunded project in higher education. There's no funding, except from what each campus contributes to their project.
So it's not, when you originally told me the title, I thought, well, there's probably a grant or a foundation that's funding this. So there's really no funding for this. This is conceptually an idea, and it's mushroomed over 200 colleges.
Exactly. And each college creates its own projects around Constitution Week or election events, as we're in a presidential year this year, and any other kinds of things to try to connect students with their communities and issues related to public policy and citizen involvement in our American democracy. We say that politics is local. All politics is local.
That's right.
And we want students to graduate from our universities as citizen scholars. Whether you're a biologist or an accountant or a teacher, we want you to know how your discipline and how your knowledge also relates to your community and you as an individual citizen and how you can improve your community.
Now, I love that statement there, citizen scholars. That's a really strong statement. Maybe expound on that a little bit more, because I really like that concept of saying that you've got a discipline, but we want you to understand, and this obviously flows well into what you're doing here, we want you to understand how your discipline can work, how your local government works. Maybe kind of talk about, maybe expound on that a little bit more. I like that concept.
Okay. Well, for instance, we have an annual student research conference here every April. And in the early years of the research conference, typically students that were in the physical sciences, the hard sciences, or even students in education and possibly public health were by far the greatest number of presenters at the Student Research Conference. When we think of research, we think of empirical research, hard numbers,
Right.
Data. But what we've done over the past 3 years is we've expanded the Student Research Conference to include a category called Citizen Scholar. And that really opens research, or our understanding of research, to that which students do to apply their classroom knowledge in community-based settings. So it opens it up to sociologists and historians and political scientists. And it just has broadened our understanding at this liberal arts university of what public scholarship is and what citizen scholars can be.
Right. Maybe could you give me some examples of maybe some of the students and some of the scholarly activity and citizenry that we're talking about?
Certainly. Well, I teach 2 core curriculum courses in our critical thinking area. It's called GC1Y. And the course that I teach 2 sections of is called Public Deliberation. And it talks about deliberative democracy as contrasted to adversarial democracy, which obviously last night in our presidential debate we had an example of adversarial democracy, or expert politics, which people with think tanks and in higher education, the kind of thing that we see in C-SPAN.
Right.
But deliberative politics is where citizens come together to deepen their knowledge about public issues, but also share strengths and weaknesses about particular approaches to these issues. So I teach students how to facilitate, how to listen to one another, how to deliberate. I have 2 freshman students who are already preparing for this April's Student Research Conference. They're going to take what they learn in the class, and they're going to take a particular issue that we are having public forums about throughout the community, not only on campus, but throughout the community, and they are going to deliver the findings of that particular series of public forums in April.
I really, again, the citizen scholars concept is, I just think that speaks so well to our students and our total education process. I think it's a great concept. We're going to come back. We're up against a break now. We're going to come back, and I actually want to talk about Times Talk. We do something with the New York Times, which is part of the American Democracy Project. We're with Gregg Kaufman, the coordinator of the American Democracy Project here at Georgia College, and we'll be right back on GC Conversations.
But it would be safe to keep your distance until the
No secret that laughter makes you smile.
reliable sources say that chicken soup has found their way out of this dangerous, but it will be safe to until they are returned.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Hello and welcome back to GC Conversations. Again, I'm your host, Windell Statement. We're with the coordinator of the American Democracy Project, Gregg Kaufman. And Gregg, I had a hard time saying that a while ago, but I didn't get his tongue tied this time. So we left off talking about, and I told the viewers we'd come back and we'd talk about the Times Talk, but I want to go back to the citizen scholar. That is just a powerful term. And talk to me about how our community, they're also citizen scholars, but let's talk about the involvement and trying to get our community involved with this project as well.
Well, one of the things that the American Democracy Project nationally is very concerned about is the responsibility of universities to be what they call stewards of place. And that means that we live in a community and we have the opportunity to work with our community friends and partners on a variety of projects to help strengthen the community. when we talk about knowledge and producing knowledge, universities and scholars with all sorts of degrees are not the only people with knowledge.
Right, that's right.
Our citizens represent community knowledge, deep historical knowledge, and Milledgeville, of course, is a very vital community. It's very important in the state's history. So what we want to do through the American Democracy Project is find ways to engage citizens in our events. So, for instance, every year we have a Global Citizenship Symposium. This year the theme is literacy, learning, leading, education for a 21st century world. And we'll be inviting people through our public school systems, educational advocacy organizations in the community, and others to join us in a panel and invite the community to talk about the ways in which we're trying to improve education in Milledgeville. A national conversation of which we are a part that was launched on September 4th from Washington, D.C. is called Shaping Our Future. How should higher education help us create the society we want? And that question basically asks, what is the role of higher education in American society, in revitalizing our democracy, and in creating more positive democratic attitudes? We kind of get cynical about politics these days.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a series of forums. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce, the Central State Hospital Local Redevelopment Authority, and a number of other community partners and campus partners to bring people together to talk about what's the role of higher education in Milledgeville, Georgia.
Right. No, that's a great question that you said about, because throughout the world, the United States typically has the most renowned educational system of higher education, where does this fit? And again, taking this down to this democracy project, where does this fit in Milledgeville? And I'm a strong believer that that we are a vital part of this community, and our community is a vital part of us. And I think this is just a great example of how this is going to work. So I want to move forward. I wanted to ask you about Times Talk, something I've actually been involved with and been to a couple of the presentations. But we see these signs around campus, and folks may see it on the internet. What is Times Talk? Maybe kind of tell us about that.
Well, Times Talk started 7 years ago. We wrote a grant and received some funding to participate in the New York Times University Readership Program, which essentially brings 250 copies of the print edition of the New York Times to campus every day. It's in 8 different locations. Citizens that drop into Einstein's or the library can pick up a copy for themselves, as well as, of course, staff, faculty, and students. I love to see, by the way, shuttle bus drivers at their stop reading the New York Times.
Absolutely.
I think that's great.
Absolutely.
But what we started Times Talk 7 years ago, where a different faculty member or staff person or student will choose a day and then a particular issue that they're interested in, and they will facilitate a conversation about a current event. So this year we've talked about the election and the economy, the election and environmentalism. We've talked about social media with you. We're going to be talking about the article that hit the New York Times 2 weeks ago on the Sunday edition about residents at Central State Hospital being relocated to community homes. Right. There were some students that found that article fascinating because they're new to Milledgeville and they simply don't know the history of Central State Hospital. Okay. So we have 2 freshman students who are working with some people at Central State, and they're going to have on October 24th a Times Talk about that whole issue of people moving from a residential facility on the state hospital grounds to group homes in Milledgeville.
Again, for our folks listening and watching, Times Talk is give me the dates and times of this. I think it's
every Wednesday. It takes place on the 2nd floor of our library and instructional technology center, kind of all the way at the end of the building on the Montgomery side. If you travel down Montgomery Street and see the library, the big windows, right inside those windows is our little Times Talk conversation area. But every Wednesday, 12 o'clock to 12:50, the public is invited. We just come and share civil conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I really enjoyed. I sat in on one, I think the first year I was here, and then was fortunate enough to be able to present a topic last year, and it's really just facilitating and listening to the feedback, and it really is. It's a great eye opener, and I think it does exactly what this American Democracy Project does. Is it gets people talking. You know, earlier you talked about we seem in our political realm to be a little more well, not quite as. It's different than it was 20, 30 years ago. How about that? It's probably the best way to say it.
It is, it is.
But, you know, the reality is everybody talks about red state, blue state, and on television and radio. But really, you know, when you're playing Little League or when you're walking down the hall or you're having lunch with somebody, you're not really concerned about that. You're just really concerned about, you know, how am I going to live a better life for my kids, better life for our society and all that. And I think this is what I'm hearing you say, a lot of what the Democracy Project does to get people engaged in this process.
Absolutely.
The term civil, I really like that because that's something we need in our democracy.
Well, I can give you another example. We did this twice in the early years of the American Democracy Project. It's a program called Congress to Campus. It started at the Stennis School of Government at University of Mississippi. But what it is it brings two retired former senators or congresspeople to a college campus, one Republican, one Democrat, and they stay together as a pair the entire time, whether they're talking to a class, whether they're doing a public event, or anything that we do with them, they're together. And they stay on campus for 2.5 days.
Right.
In the 2008 election, or actually it was a 2010, I believe, we had Congress to Campus. And we had a public meeting, and we called it Red or Blue, Are We a Nation Divided?
Right.
And what came out of that conversation, what the two congressmen talked about, was that actually we're really a purple country.
Right. That's
And the election happened, and the very next week, Time magazine had a picture of the United States on the cover, and it was colored purple.
Great story. And again, this just fascinating conversation today with Gregg Kaufman, the coordinator of the American Democracy Project. And we'll be right back to talk more about it with our last break on GC Conversations.
It's not his new group of friends. It's not the video games. It's not the neighborhood.
Mom, do I have to go to school today?
The biggest threat to your child's future could be you. Every day they miss, even in middle school, puts their graduation at risk.
Hello and welcome back on Charter Cable, NBC TV4 or WRGC 88.3 FM, right here on our Georgia College campus. I'm Windell Statement with our last segment of GC Conversations with Gregg Kaufman, the coordinator of the American Democracy Project. And Gregg, during our break there off the air, we were talking, I continue to be amazed that that there's no foundation for this, that this is simply an idea that 10 or 12 years ago somebody sat down and said, let's get this going, and that we were fortunate to be one of the 70 original institutions, and now I believe you said there's 200 plus.
Right.
I'm amazed by that. But boy, if I go back to 10, 12 years ago, this is exactly what you said. They were in that room, so well, let's do something about it. Well, we've done something about it, and to see this thing mushroom, and my guess would be that it will continue to mushroom, but to getting our college age folks involved in the democratic process, to me, is just exciting to me. Maybe talk about a combination of things here, maybe some of the things that you're hearing from your colleagues across the country that are working, and some of the excitement, and again, going back to our campus, some of the exciting things that you're proud of that are happening here. So I'll just kind of throw that open to kind of run with.
Okay, well, let me give you an example of a national initiative,
Okay.
because the American Democracy Project also works in collaboration with a number of organizations in the country that share a concern about civic vitality. One of the projects, one of the national initiatives that ADP invited universities to become a part of was called the Yellowstone Wolves Project. Now, the problem out in Yellowstone National Park is that environmentalists wanted to reintroduce wolves to their natural habitat, whereas the people who were ranchers on the perimeter of Yellowstone Park were fearful that the wolves would damage their livestock.
Right.
And so this has been going on, this conflict, this tension has been going on for a long time.
Sure.
So the ADP brought in universities and biologists and students and faculty to work with both the ranchers and the environmentalists to try to broker some kind of a compromise. And they've been then studying some of the compromise actions that came out of their conversations, and obviously learning from that.
Right.
A second national initiative that Georgia College was invited to participate in, we were one of 20 of the 240 ADP universities, was called the Civic Agency Initiative. What we mean by civic agency is we want students to leave our classes and our university with a sense of agency, and that is competence and confidence in their role as change agents in society. An example, I've taught a number of courses that relate to citizenship. The course that I taught with Dr. Jan Clark, a rhetoric professor for 3 years, was called Public Achievement. And what that did was that it helped students learn how to organize groups of people to solve a public problem. And the way they learned that was by working with young people at Blandy Elementary School. So we had 25 of our students working with 100 Blandy 5th and 6th graders, or 4th and 5th graders, I'm sorry. And they worked in small groups. The young people identified a problem in their school or community, and then came up with a solution or a project to address the problem. And the college students helped them through the entire process, how to name the problem, how to frame approaches to it, how to create an implementation plan, research it, interview the principal or people in the community, and then implement the program. And that was wildly successful. I mean, the schools loved it.
Right.
And it was an after-school program. It participated in our Yes After School program. But what day school teachers said about the young people that participated in public achievement was that they were that much more interested in talking about public issues. They were more disciplined. They were more polite in day school. So that's one course. The second course that I'm really excited about right now is called Public Deliberation. I mentioned it earlier in the interview. But what I'm seeing and reading in my students' work is that they are really quite impressed with and turned on to deliberative democracy, where they don't have to simply take the sound bites that the media offers about the debate last night, or what the experts say on C-SPAN.
Right.
But they actually deliberate in class and then go into the community and facilitate deliberations about the national debt, the energy problem, Social Security, and this year shaping our future. How should higher education help us create the society we want? Students develop agency and confidence in themselves. We had our first two class deliberations this week, and they did a great job. They failed, they laughed about it, and they're building on their mistakes. But by the end of the semester, these students will leave with a great deal of confidence in this form of democracy, which is very accessible to anyone who simply cares about their community.
Well, to me, the big theme I'm hearing here is engaging one another in a civil discourse,
Absolutely.
and just talking about it.
Absolutely.
And that's what unfortunately, when we turn the television on, a lot of times we don't see that. That doesn't make the highlights of people just sitting down and having a good conversation. The highlight is, maybe two opposite parties going after each other. So.
Well, I've talked to some adults in the community about the debates, and I had a number of, I won't name their names, but community leaders say, gosh, I turned on the debate and I turned it off after 10 minutes because it just got me so angry. Well, that's very different than making a commitment to 90 minutes of sitting down with your fellow citizens and talking through something in a civil way, and having facilitators who are trained to be simply neutral moderators, to give equal time to a variety of approaches to an issue, and then say at the end, all right then, have we reached some common ground?
Right.
Have we agreed to disagree about some things?
Yeah.
Are there some people that we should have had around this table or in this conversation? How can we move forward with this? And that's very different experience. It builds confidence in politics. It builds confidence in democracy at the local level when you can have those conversations. And if students leave with that kind of experience and confidence, they're going to be better citizens.
Well, that common ground concept of what you just said, but if we're training our students to leave here, and if whether they stay in this community or go back to their community or move to another community, they're going to take this civil course with them and be able to have that type of engagement that we all want more of.
Absolutely.
We just can't seem to get there, but certainly this American Democracy Project is making a difference in that. So,
well, we've seen significant growth. We now have around 2,000 students come to our annual symposium. We have 40, 50 people coming out every week to Times Talk. I mean, when you kind of add up the numbers, over the first 4 years of the Coverdell Institute and the American Democracy Project, we sponsored 300 events and had 18,000 student hours devoted to those outside the classroom voluntary events.
Wow, yeah. Well, Greg, that's our time is upon us, and I tell you, I had a great conversation and just learned an awful lot about this project. So thank you for sharing today.
Thank you for having me very much.
So for Gregg Kaufman, I'm Windell Statement on GC Conversations. We'll see you next time.